And of course we had in our Skyhawks what we called a buddy store, so we could put a centerline fuel tank on a Skyhawk, which had a little propeller up front to provide hydraulic power to the store, and a hose and drogue, and the refueling Skyhawk could then refuel a number of other Skyhawks, and in fact the refueling Skyhawk could actually pump its entire fuel load into the receivers, and sometimes of course the tanker pilot had to be a bit careful when he was getting down that he had enough gas to get home. So we were quite skilled in in-flight refueling on the Skyhawk, and we used to do in-flight refueling by day and by night, and night in-flight refueling was a demanding exercise because it could only be done in clear, of course, not in cloud, but on a very dark night we would set the tanker up, say on the 360 radial at 100 miles or something, and he would circle, and the fighter aircraft would then rendezvous by arriving at that rendezvous and then setting up a circle inside the tanker's circle and 500 feet below the tanker's height, and then you'd do a slow stern chase until you acquired the tanker visually and came up behind him, and then it needed to be a very careful step-by-step process to get 4 Skyhawks onto the tanker one by one, and then off the tanker and out to the other side holding until all 4 Skyhawks had been refueled in the dark. A very challenging exercise. But it was one of our RNZAF skills, in-flight refueling. So, excuse me, to get to Hawaii, as I recall, the squadron flew Hakia to Fiji, Fiji to Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands, and then the Marshall Islands direct to Hawaii, which is about 2,000 or even 2,200 nautical miles, so a very long leg, and they needed 2 refuels to get there, and if they missed either refuel they wouldn't get there. So right out in the middle of that sector, Marshall Islands to Hawaii, there was a tiny pinprick of an island called Johnson Island, super secret American base. I believe something to do with space tracking and missile tracking, and in the Cold War days. And but that was the only dot with a runway, and so of course we wanted to nominate it as a divert, and the Americans sucked their teeth and shuffled their feet for a long time, and eventually came up with a message that basically said, well, all right, Kiwis, you can nominate us as a divert, but if you land there, you'd better have a bloody emergency. So fortunately we didn't need to do that. So that trip was the RNZF's most ambitious deployment to Hawaii, and literally flying over 2,200 miles, which amazed the Americans that we would fly single-seat, single-pilot aircraft over such a long distance. And I remember when I was commanding officer, I had a big wall map. When I was doing briefings to VIPs and visitors, I had a big wall map of the world on it, and I put a layer of clear plastic over it and traced all of the routes that the New Zealand Skyhawk Squadron had done. So from Hakia up to Hawaii, all up through Australia, up into Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines, and so on. And so, particularly visiting senior officers, I would be saying, well, this is where we go. And they'd say, your Air Force goes all those places? I'd say, no, this squadron goes all those places. Wow, that's very impressive. And then I'd take the clear plastic off and turn it upside down and put the Hakia position over the United Kingdom. And they were gobsmacked by that, because 75 Squadron's routes extended right down almost to South Africa, right through Europe, being Australia and Moscow and down towards Italy and Rome and so on, because that's about 1,000 miles. And then the Hawaii trip, of course, extended way east of Siberia into almost China. And they said, that is incredible that your squadron could fly to those places.